Welcome to One with the Other Way, a podcast about your journey and finances. I'm your host, James. Today we have Wanda and Peggy with us to start our new series on life events. Today we're going to be talking about marriage, finding a partner, combining finances. So, Wanda, you want to kick us off? I know you had some, hey, you're married moments. You want to talk about that?
Are you talking about how many times I've been married, James? That's bad form. So really, right, there's three things when you think about marriage or settling down with a partner, right? You really want to think about the cash flow, the balance sheets, and solutions for moving forward. We have that curly Q thing, like, okay, here we are, whoa, we're getting married, whoa, and away we go. And so we really want to focus, I think, on those three things. Do you want
I
to talk
guess
cash flow a little bit, or?
when combining finances, when you're moving in with a partner, how do you start that conversation? Or should you bring in a financial advisor immediately to help make that conversation happen? Or what do you see with your clients, I guess, is the best way to say, clients that have gotten married or have combined finances with someone?
True love, willing the good of the other. That's the first thing, right? And then everything else is support cast to that. Somewhere in the process, when you find true love or that place that says we'd like to move in together, then it really is time to look at money, because money is one of the things that can harm a relationship. And it's one of the biggest speed bumps in a relationship. And so as soon as you can have this discussion about money, it's important. Your actions tell a lot about how you feel about money, whether it's when you go out on a date or going out to dinner and you look at who pays for what. And that's that first marker in cash flow. How is cash flow supporting the relationship? And that's a very superficial thing, because you will go out and you will spend money, and how that money is spent and who pays for what is is really the first marker, first line in the sand in terms of cash flow.
Well, to answer your question, James, about what do we see with our clients, I think we don't see enough conversations about this before it happens. I think a lot of people get caught up in that you're taking this big step in your relationship. And so you're just doing the relationship part of it. And you're not thinking about the actual mechanics, except for things like, giving notice at one place or giving notice at both places and you're moving in. You think about that mechanics, but I don't think there's enough time spent on, okay, so now let's talk about what is our life going to be like joined. Are you moving in together, and then your ultimate goal is that you're going to get married? Is this a lifelong commitment? And if so, then, okay, what does that look like? And how are we going to set up and divide the expenses? And I think that, like Wanda said, cash flow and money is a huge cause of problems in relationships, and it's an ongoing cause. I mean, you're always going to have to talk about money your whole time together, right? There's never
Right.
going to be a time when you're going to be able to say, well, we don't need to talk about that anymore, because your life changes all the time and things happen and you move or you do. So you're always going to have that conversation. So I think having the conversation prior to moving in together is a great way to set up the habit of, this is going to be an ongoing discussion, and maybe take out some of the emotion. And yes, having it with a financial advisor, if one or both of you already have a financial advisor, then hey, that's great. But I think it's important that you have the conversation about everything to do with your finances. Who's going to pay for what kind of habits do you have?
You bring up a very good point about the mechanics of it. And the key thing to working through mechanics is communications constantly. Then you talk about how life will change, right? And that's why we're talking about these life events, because it's going to be communication, and it's going to be regular and consistent communication. So when we're working with our clients, we like to see them once a quarter, whether they're single, but definitely when they're having a big life event change, right? Like settling down with somebody. But we want to see somebody quarterly, a family or individual quarterly, to review their finances and to make sure they're tracking and moving towards their ideal life. So if you think about, we're non-emotionally attached to the relationship and we want to have a conversation with you quarterly, then how often should you be communicating with your partner regarding finances? And in not communicating, what kind of resentments could be potentially building in that space?
I had a mentor one time before my wife and I got married. He had mentioned to me saying that when you marry someone, you move in together, it's not just that you're building a relationship together, you're also building a business together. And to think about it like you have multiple decisions on different fronts to face. So it spawned a lot of conversations between Emma and I. We were just trying to figure out how to make this work, because it's so much more than just the, oh, lovey-dovey stuff. There's so much stuff to go through.
Well,
And I'm so glad I sat down with a financial advisor.
I know, right? But I will say is I bristle a little bit when somebody talks about this as a business, a relationship as a business. And you hear these things or these trite phrases, right? We're in there, 50-50, but really you're in there 100% because you really have to be in there. So in a business, it can be very clinical. This is 50, this is going to be in that bucket, this is going to be, but when you're in a relationship, it's 100% each time. It is a business relationship in a way, but it's much more important than any business that you'll ever enter. A relationship with another human being is so much more important than that, I think. I do want to say something about like the communication also. I remember a bit ago, we have mentors in our life, James, that guide us and give us some food for thought. I remember hearing somebody say that a lot of times when a person is thinking about getting divorced, not to talk about that other side of the relationship, when they think about the divorce, it's because during the time that the couple has been together, they have been laying bricks down regarding topics that they have not addressed during the relationship. And by the time they're talking about divorce, it's too late. The brick is laid and the stone wall is built. And so a simple thing like who's paying for dinner tonight, in the moment, a nothing moment, yet could be starting to build up like towards this resentment. So important to talk cash flow. And we've talked in terms of how mechanically to do it, because you have to figure out a way mechanically that works for the two of you, that's comfortable and that's positive. And so you could look at that and say, okay, you're going to pay these bills, you're going to pay these bills. Or alternatively, you can say, these are the household bills, and you're going to put in 50-50 towards the household bills mechanically. But what if somebody makes more money than the other? Having the discussion about how does that work mechanically.
Or if one of the partners has more debt than the other, I guess you could also look at it that way, right?
Right, which feeds into that second thought, right, from cash flow to balance sheet. I think one of the important things is to talk about your current balance sheet. That goes to the point of your business, the business idea. What is your balance sheet? What's your positives and what's your negatives? What's your assets? What's your liabilities? And this balance sheet can give both of you clarity on where your starting point is in the relationship financially, so that you can move into the where do we want to go with our life together, the most important part, where we want to go with our life together.
Going into meeting with the financial advisor, Peggy, you had mentioned you've met with plenty of people who probably could have had more conversations beforehand. What do you see are some of the, I don't know if consequences are the right word, or just like unforeseen circumstances that conversations didn't happen? How do you rectify that? Let's say you're now married or you're now living together. How do you go about that with the financial advisor, for instance?
Well, I mean, hopefully you're not coming into it with, that wall too high, right? Because we would sit down and look at everything and go through it. But it's a really tricky thing, because say that one person makes more, or one person comes into a relationship with a lot of investments and the other one comes in with a lot of debt. So you have to kind of unravel that and the motion of it, and then the frustration of, one person could be a spender and one's a saver, and you have to figure out a way that they can communicate and be okay with that part, right? Because that there's not everything about the person that you love is not going to be perfect and compatible with everything about you, right? So I think that when you love somebody, you have blinders to some of those faults. They're not bad blinders, but good ones, right? I know that I have some serious pet peeves, and my loved one he gets to do those things. And for some reason, it doesn't bother me as much when other people do. It's just a weird thing. I don't know why. It's just a weird thing. You tend to be a little more tolerant, I guess. I don't know. We make a joke about when those things go away, we're in a lot of trouble. I think you have to really, really communicate that. And because we're not going to have as much emotion attached to them, we can ask questions like, well, how important is that to you? And get both of them to speak And then maybe the communication just starts. It has to just be communication. We're not going to help, we're not going to say you, this person needs to pay more, that person needs to pay more, or you should pay off the debt, or we're going to give you clarity about what you have and try to open the line of communication and get a plan going.
Mm-hmm.
That's what our job is, not to decide for you.
In the hands of a good financial advisor, you are a counselor. You are detached from the mechanics of it, yet you can help provide clarity around the mechanics of it in a very non-judgmental way, because we're not living with either one of you. But we're just looking at it in black and white and trying to lay it out for you. And you might not have noticed it because of those blinders. But it is funny about what we accept with people that we live versus
I don't know. Isn't that true with everybody?
True.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's a weird thing that I got or not, but
Yeah.
No, I agree. I mean, it's because you have a full picture, I feel like, of the person you love. And it's like, well, okay, this is something that annoys me, but this is something that also I love about this person.
And in the big picture, right, you want this person to be in your life, like for the long run. And so you're not here in the moment, just in this moment, but you're here looking down the path of what your life potentially could be. And so, again, providing clarity, seeing a financial advisor can provide clarity in where you see yourself in 10, 20, 40, 60 years. Because if one person wants to be on a ranch in the country and one person wants to be in a condo in the city, it's important to talk about that sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's so many things like that, I think, that people
What
don't
retirement
talk about.
looks like.
Well, right. But it's not just that. I mean, there's so many steps, and I think they don't take the steps, right? It's like, oh, we're going to move in together. And sometimes you literally will move in together because it's a financial decision. And you think, well, this is silly. We're paying for 2 apartments, but we're only sleeping in one, right?
Right.
And so you think, well, it's logical. We should just do this. In some cases, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe that's not your personality or whatever. But again, that's a whole nother thing and not our decision.
I think that having the discussion around cash flow and your balance sheet before you move in is helpful, because once you've moved in, right, there's other dynamics going on once you've moved in, right?
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that you're sleeping with the other person, right? so it's harder potentially to have discussion because other things get in the way. Life gets in the way. Doing the dishes gets in the way. All the mechanical stuff gets in the way of having the discussion with clarity before bricks start getting laid, because life gets busy. I mean, I'm busy and I'm a single person, right? And you got 2 people. Then you got 2 people's, whether it's medical appointments or pets or the house, the vents need cleaning, or so it goes.
Infinite possibilities, almost,
Yeah. Because when you come in relationship, you definitely want to have a balance sheet. And it's not enough just to look at the balance sheet. The balance sheet has meaning. The balance sheet tells me what's important to you. And so knowing in the relationship what's important to the other person, I think helps strengthen the relationship. When we have a discussion and we say, hey, I got the credit card bills got a little out of hand here. I had a medical issue here, and this is how I addressed it. And so then the relationship can grow on that and say, okay, that can happen again. And what tools now do we have as a couple? Because we're stronger as a couple going into this than before, provided that we've had the discussion about how it is that we got here. If I have big credit card debt and it just sort of creeped up on me, do I want to address it? Because that tells me who I am as well if I don't want to address it, right? This is a big life event, whether it's marriage or moving in with somebody, and having clarity around the balance sheet tells you a lot about that person. Even if I have my blinders on, I'm going to have to accept where the other person is. And that desire in a human sometimes, because I love this person, says, I want to solve that problem. So let me pay off that debt, for example, may not be the best decision, because this person might not have resolved the issue that's caused them to be in the debt. Something that, again, clarity would help.
We talked about a lot of the mechanics of the balance sheet, looking at, moving in. What about some of these bigger costs like a wedding, for instance? How does someone prepare for that amidst this whole communication of the balance sheet? And it just sounds like there's a lot of opportunities to spend more money during this time.
There is. And in our world today, we do have a cultural struggle right now. A part of it in that old school way that says the bride's parents are going to pay for the wedding and this kind of thing. And then part in this women's lib thing that says, 50-50, cutting costs or whatever. It is important just to have the discussion about what it looks like. Do you want a Cinderella wedding, right? And if you want that Cinderella wedding, how's that going to come about? And how does that impact you now and in the future in terms of your goals, in terms of your moving forward as a couple? I've seen people spend up to $80,000 for the one day. To me, a lot of money. I've seen people go to the courthouse and then put the money in a down payment for a house. Again, this is a reflection a little bit about who they are and what's important to them. Wedding days are very important. It's a sign to all your friends, to the world, that you're committed into this relationship. Yet at the same time, balance in what's going on in your life. And again, the balance sheet can help, right? If I look at my balance sheet and there's a lot of negative, and I'm saying, hey, I want to have the median cost of a wedding is $30,000. Well, then what's going to give? Because we have seen lots of marriages, we can help estimate the cost of a wedding. People don't think of things like favors, the rehearsal dinner, hotels, flights. You think about the dress, right? You think about the flowers, right? But then what about the centerpieces? What about the and the list can kind of go on and on. I think you found that when your wedding, right, James?
Oh, yep. I got married pretty recently, and we still remember some of those costs that just kind of came out of nowhere, and it just feels like
Photographer.
Hey, yeah, you pay the on the front end the fees are the easy part, and then you realize wedding day is a month away, and then oh shoot, there's this bill and this bill that you didn't foresee, and you got to figure out how you're going to pay for that.
If you are not doing the wedding route, if you're moving in with someone, right, there's the mechanics of maybe the deposits, right, that have to be made, and the moving expenses if one's moving from here to there.
Or updated furniture.
Furniture, right. That old couch is not going to work for me. So it's not even just like the wedding date, but the moving date is also an expensive day as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the key is really just going to be communication, though. And if you start the conversation before you move in, you can set the tone that this is going to be an ongoing conversation that you're going to have your entire relationship. And I mean, I think that it's going to be healthier to just do it from the beginning.
That's similar to what my wife and I did. Yeah. Before we got married, we were doing like a monthly kind of finance talk. Now we still do our monthly like finance meeting over a cup of coffee on a Sunday,
As I say, if we're meeting with clients quarterly, then you and your significant other ought to talk about money a little bit more frequently than we do, I think for sure. Mm-hmm. So we talked about the balance sheet, right? Yet that's not the finite. That's not the end, right? The end is this relationship that you have. Some of my favorite families are those that have been married like 60 years to the same person. And they've had a life journey. So we're going to talk a lot about some of the life events, I think, right, James?
Over the next few weeks, we'll be having different life event series kind of covering the big stages that people will be approaching as they grow in their financial journey.
So starting here on cash flow, looking at the balance sheet, and then figuring out where we want to go. What does our life together look like? And it's going to be an amazing journey for you. And we do want to accompany you on it. I do a lot of vicarious living. I have a lot of exciting families that do a lot of very cool things. So I always love hearing about them and seeing pictures of them and that kind of thing. So.
And if you want Peggy or Wanda to assist you on your journey, you can find us at financesforreallife.com. You can schedule an appointment with either one of them, and you can stay tuned every 2 weeks for the new podcasts that come out. So thank you for listening. We hope you have a great rest of your day. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advice offered through Finances for Real Life, a registered investment advisor, and separate entity from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision.